What did it take to build a railroad across our country? Imagine the vision, planning, labor, and investment it took to make this transcontinental railroad a reality. For the first time ever, people could travel quickly and easily over mountains, through valleys, and over water at the amazing speed of 18 miles per hour. Creating the Transcontinental Railroad was one of the greatest achievements of the American people in the 19th century. It required visionaries willing to take risks and workers willing to perform difficult and exhausting labor. These railroad builders numbered in the tens of thousands. Many were immigrants, but whether they came from Ireland, China, Africa, or elsewhere, they all worked together to link the coasts of this nation for the first time. It was a risky proposition for most American capitalists. No one could imagine how big this project was going to be or the potential returns. What was life like for the railroad builders? Toiling for low wages in harsh conditions, the crews battled intense heat in summer and icy blizzards in the winter. Risking their lives, they faced danger in blasting tunnels through mountains and endured back-breaking hours of clearing forests. Even finding this army of human muscle was tough. While advertising notices in California grandly offered permanent employment for 5,000 men, usually no more than 800 signed up, and every payday up to 100 men left for the mines or elsewhere. The railroads employed anyone and everyone they could. Working together were new immigrants, recently discharged Confederate and Union soldiers, unsuccessful prospectors and farmers. The plan for linking the nation involved two key railroad companies, the Central Pacific and Union Pacific Railroads. These companies were headed by rival tycoons Collis Huntington and Thomas Durant. The Civil War made a major impact on building the railroad, with Congress promising free land and loans to railroad builders. But as the war continued, the railroad companies faced a serious problem: lack of money. Work had slowed to a standstill. To finish laying the track that would connect the country, the railroad companies needed more money than had ever been spent before on a single American enterprise. So in 1864, Huntington and Durant joined forces and went to Washington to seek federal funding. The method they used was common at the time. They bought the congressional votes needed to pass a special railroad bill. This bill allowed the Central Pacific Railroad to build until it ran into or past the tracks of the Union Pacific Railroad. And so the great race was on to see who would close the transcontinental rail gap first, the Central or the Union Pacific Railroad. And it would be one of the most exciting contests the world has ever known. What was a typical workday like? After a pre-dawn breakfast, railroad crews set to work, usually staying on till sundown, with an hour off at noon for lunch. Using mainly muscle power, these men installed up to 5 miles of track in a day. They filled ravines, built bridges across rivers, and cut tunnels through huge mountains. As track was completed, a work train would arrive. It was called the perpetual train because it was continuously moving. Thousands of poor laborers whose names are not in the history books built America's railroads. But another kind of labor was required as well: financing and running the railroad companies. Men like Vanderbilt, Carnegie, Pullman, and Rockefeller became fabulously wealthy as railroad barons. Through their efforts, the railroads became the country's biggest employer, affording people a chance to move faster, farther, and more comfortably than ever before. The railroad barons were also called the robber barons because of their ruthless business tactics. But without these men, America's transcontinental railroad might have remained a dream. And so, with the combined efforts of railroad workers, engineers, and entrepreneurs, the railroad building continued. And finally, on May 10, 1869, the two locomotives nosed toward one another at a chosen spot called Promontory Summit in the great Utah desert. No one there doubted that this moment was one of the nation's best. 5 days later, regular passenger service was announced. It symbolized more than the success of an incredible feat of engineering. These railroad tracks brought together not only east and west, but north and south, former Confederate soldiers working alongside former Union soldiers. For many, driving in the last gold spike symbolized that our nation was united again. The inscribed prayer on a gold spike reads, "May God continue the unity of our country as this railroad unites the two great oceans of the world." We were united through the vision, dedication, and commitment it took to build a transcontinental railroad, one of the wonders of the modern world.